Most hauntings have a classic aesthetic. A Victorian dress, a faceless gray wanderer, a weeping child. You expect them in abandoned asylums or graveyards. You do not expect them while you're closing down a Starbucks in a busy shopping mall. But before we step into the darkness, understand one thing. This isn't an urban legend. The events you are about to hear are based on verified independent accounts reported by Austin Ghost Tours and corroborating staff testimony from 2014. Two different employees, separated by time, described the exact same impossible figure without ever speaking to one another. He wasn't a demon, he wasn't a monster, he was a guy. About 5'10", spiked black hair, and he was wearing khaki pants. And he was waiting for the clock to strike 10:51. Hawaii, the Aloha State, sun, surf, and sand. It is a place where people come to escape reality, not to confront the paranormal. But locals know better. The islands are ancient, filled with history, sacred ground, and the night marchers. But this story doesn't happen on an ancient battlefield. It happens here, in the sterile, air-conditioned arteries of a shopping mall. The date is roughly 2014. The location is a specific, undisclosed Starbucks, nestled deep within the mall's complex. For one shift supervisor, let's call her Sarah, this was just a job, a grind. You clock in, you deal with the morning rush, you handle the difficult customers, and you go home. It was mundane. It was loud. It was normal. Until the closing shifts started. If you've never been in a mall after closing, it's a liminal space. It feels wrong. The silence is heavy. And in this specific Starbucks, the architecture itself seemed to be hiding something. The layout was crucial. You had the front floor, and then a long, hallway-like back room. The manager's desk was squeezed in the back, right next to the industrial Hobart dishwasher. Sarah worked there for over a year. And for over a year, she realized that the store had a schedule, a routine that had nothing to do with coffee. The first sign was subtle. It's something you could brush off as bad HVAC or a drafty building. It was the temperature. In the back room, there was a single corner, just one specific spot near the desk. Now remember, this is right next to a high-temperature Hobart dishwasher. This machine blasts steam. It radiates heat. That entire back room should be a sauna. But that corner? It sat at a consistent, bone-chilling 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't matter if the dishwasher had been running for 3 hours. Doesn't matter if it was a humid Hawaiian summer night. You stepped into that corner, and the air was dead, cold, stagnant. Sarah felt it every night she counted the till. It was the kind of cold that doesn't just sit on your skin. It seeps into your muscle. She tried to ignore it. We always try to ignore it, don't we? We tell ourselves it's just the air conditioning vent. It's just a draft. But deep down, your lizard brain knows the truth. Nature doesn't work like that. Thermodynamics doesn't work like that. But the cold was just the atmosphere. The activity, that was clockwork. This was 2014. Streaming wasn't ubiquitous in retail yet. They had an old CD player in the back to keep the mood up during the cleanup. Sarah would put on a playlist. Pop, rock, jazz, didn't matter. Every single night. It didn't matter what CD was in the tray. It didn't matter how new the disc was. At exactly 10:51 p.m. Not 10:50, not 10:52. At 10:51, the player would skip. It would stutter on a loop for exactly 60 seconds. Imagine that. You're alone in the back. The mall is silent. And suddenly, your only source of comfort, the music, is hijacked. It's a small thing, right? A skipping CD. But when it happens every night at the exact same minute, it stops being a malfunction. It becomes a signal. At 10:52, it would smooth out. The song would continue as if nothing happened. It was as if something or someone was passing through. Something that disrupted the electrical current just by existing. The cold spot, the skipping CD, these were environmental, like Sarah could handle environmental, but then she started seeing him. It started as movement in the corner of her eye, the classic shadow person phenomenon. You turn your head and it's gone. You blame exhaustion, you blame the caffeine. But then the sightings got clearer. One night Sarah was alone on the floor. Her barista had stepped out to use the restroom. She was waiting for him to return. She saw movement near the back entrance, the long hallway. She thought it was her barista coming back. She turned to say something. Nobody. But she had seen him clearly this time. This wasn't a blob of smoke. This wasn't a Grim Reaper figure. It was a man. He was about 5'10". He had jet black hair. It was styled, spiked up like he was stuck in the early 2000s. And he was wearing khaki pants. This detail, the khakis, is what makes this story so unnerving to me. It's too specific to be a hallucination. If your brain is inventing a ghost, it invents a monster. It doesn't invent a guy in business casual. The figure had a routine. He would pace. He would walk the back hallway, back and forth, like he was waiting for an order, or waiting for a ride, or maybe looking for someone. Sarah kept this to herself. You don't go around telling your coworkers you're seeing a spiked hair khaki ghost. That's a fast track to a psych evaluation, not a promotion. She suffered in silence for months, until RJ. RJ was a newer hire. He was working the register one slow afternoon. Sarah was nearby. Suddenly, RJ jumps. He yells out, "Oh, shitty!" Sarah rushes over. What? What happened? RJ is pale. He's staring down the back hallway. He says, "I swear I just saw someone walk past." Sarah's heart stops, but she plays it cool. She has to know. She asks him, "What did he look like?" RJ doesn't hesitate. He doesn't say a ghost. He describes a person. "It looked like a dude, about my height. Black hair, kind of spiked up. And he was wearing khaki pants." Khakis. In that moment, the reality of the situation crashed down on both of them. They hadn't spoken about this. They hadn't primed each other. Two independent observers, months apart, seeing the exact same specific apparition. Sarah told him everything. The cold spot. The 10:51 skipping CD. And as they stood there, sharing their fear, validation turned into something else. The Hobart dishwasher, the one next to the cold spot, began to scream. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It was a tantrum. The lights flashed error codes. that shouldn't exist. It shrieked, and then, click, it shut itself off. It was as if the entity knew they were talking about him. It was listening, and it didn't like being perceived. Now the skeptics are screaming at their screens right now. Check the cameras! Where is the CCTV? Well, this is a bank-level corporate entity. Of course, there were cameras. There was a camera positioned specifically to watch the back desk, mostly to catch employees stealing from the safe. It had a perfect view of the haunted corridor and the 55-degree corner. Sarah's store manager eventually tried to pull footage, not for the ghost, but for an unrelated theft investigation involving an assistant manager. They pulled the logs. They went to the timestamps where Sarah and RJ saw the figure. The live feed worked. You could see the room in real time. But the recordings? Completely blank. Every time they tried to play back footage from that specific camera, there was nothing, no static, just data loss. Null. The system said it was recording. The little red light was on. But the entity in khakis apparently didn't consent to being filmed. It's a phenomenon known in paranormal circles as selective electronic interference. The energy required to manifest draws from the environment, draining batteries, skipping CDs, and corrupting digital files. So, what was it? Hawaii is rife with legends. The Night Marchers are ancient Hawaiian warriors who roam the islands, but they don't wear khakis. The Menehune are forest dwellers, not mall dwellers. The khaki detail suggests something more modern, a residual haunting. This is a theory where a traumatic event or a moment of high emotion gets recorded into the environment. It plays back like a loop. The pacing, the walking back and forth. It suggests anxiety, waiting. Was this a former employee? A customer who died in the mall? Some digging into Hawaiian ghost forums reveals that the Ala Moana Center, the largest open-air shopping center in the world, has a history. It was built on swampland, and like much of Honolulu, sits on layers of history that weren't always respected during construction. But usually spirits on sacred ground appear as spirits. This figure was disturbingly corporeal. He looked like he was late for a shift at the Gap. That normalcy is what makes it terrifying. It suggests that when we die, we don't all become wise spirits or terrifying demons. Some of us might just get stuck. Stuck in a routine. Stuck in the back hallway of a Starbucks, pacing back and forth, forever waiting for a break that never comes. Sarah eventually left that job. RJ moved on. The store is likely still there. Renovated, remodeled. New baristas stand in that back corner. Maybe they feel a chill. Maybe they check the thermostat. Maybe they wonder why the Spotify playlist glitches out sometimes. But they don't know about the man in the khakis. They don't know that in the corner, just out of sight, someone is watching them close.